Welcome to Big Pool Discipleship 101, the Bible in a Year, Week 43, Mark 15 and 16, and Luke 1 through 11, From Pilate to Unbearable Religious Demands. In Mark 15, what was the purpose in Christ's trial before Pilate? Note, a Jewish tribunal alone had no authority to carry out the death penalty. Why was Jesus mostly silent? Who were Jesus' foes? What was the priest's attitude? What was Pilate's attitude? What was the crowd's attitude? What is the significance of the women watching the cross? Why is Jesus' death a victory? In Mark 16, how do we count 3 days using the ancient inclusive method of counting? Note the most ancient manuscripts end with verse 8. Verses 9 through 20 were added later. Some theorize that a later writer finished Mark's work because he died suddenly, or it was deemed too abrupt. Others theorize that the original ending was lost and was later replaced by witnesses. Given the doubts surrounding these verses, is it wise to use them to support ideas like believers' baptism, spiritual warfare, mandatory tongues, snake handling, and eating poison? Luke is actually a two-part book known as Luke Acts. They were written by the same author. The earliest copies of Luke Acts that we have are third generation and fall into two categories: Western and Alexandrian copies of Luke. The Western texts seem to have been revised from the original, and the Alexandrian copies appear to have not been altered. The author wrote to Christians about what happened and what it meant. What does Luke 1 explain as to the reason for this book? How was the birth of John foretold? How was the birth of Jesus foretold? What does the Magnificat, verses 46 to 55, Mary's song, say to you? What does the Benedictus, verses 68 to 79, the song of Christmas, Zechariah's song, say to you? In Luke 2 is the familiar Christmas story. Why was God interested in lowly shepherds? Why was Jesus presented in the temple? Why was God interested in Simeon and Anna? Why did Jesus speak with the teachers? In Luke 3, how did John the Baptist prepare the way for Christ? After Jesus' baptism, why is the genealogy from Joseph back to Adam important? In Luke 4, what did the temptation of Christ do for the world? Why is Jesus' message good news for the poor? Why does the Bible mention the poor over and over? Why were the people in the synagogue furious with Jesus? How many Christians today would be angry at Jesus? After Jesus healed several people, what did he continue to preach? In Luke 5, how did Jesus call his first disciples? What did Jesus require the man healed of leprosy to do? What was the controversy over him healing a paralyzed man? What was Jesus' answer to the super-righteous as to why he ate with sinners? What did Jesus teach about fasting? In Luke 6, and discussions over the Sabbath, how does the spirit of the law override the letter of the law? Why are some lists of the apostles slightly different? How are the Beatitudes treated differently in Luke? What do 4 blessings and 4 woes teach us differently than Matthew's treatment of this subject? How hard is it to love our enemies? What is the difference between not judging and using righteous judgment? Look at Leviticus 19:15 and John 7:24. What does a tree's fruit have to do with being a true Christian? What does Jesus say is the strong foundation? See verse 47. What does the faith of a Roman officer teach us about being self-righteous because we may be regular church attenders? What did Jesus raising a widow's son cause? What message did Jesus have for John the Baptist? What does verse 30 say about those who operate outside of official channels? What does verse 34 say about Jesus' dietary habits? Why did Jesus allow himself to be anointed by a sinful woman? In Luke 8, what does Jesus' inclusion of several women say about his ministry? How is Luke's approach to the parable of the seed different than other versions? What is the different focus of the parable of the lamp in Luke? Who is the true family of Jesus? How is faith the focus in the rest of the chapter? In Luke 9, what does the missionary journey of the 12 teach us about over-preparedness? How ought feeding the multitude free us from worry? Who do you say Jesus is? What does taking up our cross mean to you? What does the Transfiguration say about our future? What did the healing of the demon-possessed boy reveal about his faith? What about his father's faith? Who in our church is the least and therefore the greatest? How did Jesus' attitude differ from his disciples in regard to a Samaritan welcome? What does the analogy mean, the foxes have dens? What does the analogy mean, putting our hand to the plow? In Luke 10, when Jesus apostled or sent out the 70 or 72, how does that relate to our daily witness in our communities? How is Jesus' Thanksgiving prayer in verses 21 to 24 significant? How did the religion expert summarize the Old Testament requirements? Who does the story of the Good Samaritan tell us is our neighbor? Is this irrelevant to immigration debates? How was Martha focused on the lesser of two important things? In Luke 11, why do some say debts and others trespasses in the Lord's Prayer? Note, sin is a debt, and so both are appropriate. What does the story of the midnight borrower teach us about prayer? What does verse 23 say about many, even nice people? If a demon is cast out, but a person does not change, what will happen? What percentage of Christians do you think actually practice their faith? See verse 28. What is the sign of Jonah? In verses 33 to 36, what does it say about what our eyes are on? Why does Jesus say that sorrow awaits the super-religious? In verse 46, what are some unbearable religious demands? Well, that's it for this time. Until next time, God bless you.